Welcome to the STABcast, a podcast dedicated to Star Wars Legion.
Are we blind? Deploy the garrison! No!
Welcome, cadets and commanders, to STABcast, the Sunsphere Tactical Attack Brigade's Legion podcast. I'm Ben, Battle for Endor Fowler, with Will, Caravan of Courage Heim, and Ryan, Holiday Special Slowoski. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing today?
Doing just fine.
I'm doing a lot worse now that I gotta remember those movies.
This week on the STABcast, battle reports from our monthly sci-fi event, a look at building local gaming communities, and much, much more.
So this weekend, we got to play at our local store, Sci-Fi City, for our monthly tournament. We had 7 players show up for a cool day of gaming. We had 5 really neat, interesting tables put out that we kind of put an asterisk next to all of them saying that we're trying some experimental things. Ben, why don't you tell us about one of the tables that you had the most fun creating?
I really think, and I'm going to sound biased, it's the farm table. It's the one that I have. So it's my table, basically. It's all the stuff that we had. But as Ryan and I were playing around with the build, we said, you know what? What if we built an S-shaped wall across the middle? We give everyone a little bit of light cover. We give everyone a little bit of heavy cover. We have some difficult terrain to have to walk through. We create some hills on one side, on both sides. So it was a visually balanced map on both sides. But in order to do almost all the objectives that were going to pop up that day, you had to go to that wall and through it. And so I didn't get to play on that map, but it looked really interesting. Ryan, you got to play on that. So
I did, yeah. The cool thing that I thought we did was it was an S-shaped kind of wall going through the middle, bisecting it. But we made sure that there was a little building that you could go in and out of in the dead center of the map. So if you're playing recover supplies or intercept transmissions or another objective that requires you to use that definite midpoint, it was inside of a building. I did get to play on the map. I played a goofy game on it because it was, and I'll get to a little bit later, it was disarray. So the S-wall was really strange, and I'll talk about how. But the wall wasn't just a full-on wall. There was a break in each wall where you could move through clearly, and then there was a little bit wider segment somewhere else down the line that was difficult terrain to get through, and the rest of it was blocking terrain for troopers or heavy cover for vehicles. It was a really cool map. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely bold and ambitious, to say the least.
So, Will, what map did you have fun creating? Which one did you enjoy the most?
I liked our impassable water map. We kind of took this green foresty map and then put this river through the middle and said, for troopers, this river's impassable. But basically on each third line, in the center and then on each side, we had a way around it. So it kind of made this interesting, choke point map that had some really interesting things on it, like bikes still speeding around, ATRTs walking slowly but still going through it. So it really just made the infantry have to think more about how they were going to get to their different objectives.
Yeah, that's the one I did not get to play, and it looked like quite a bit of fun, and I think I got quite a bit of good feedback, but impassable terrain, especially of that size, wasn't something that we had seen a lot of or messed with a bunch before, so it was interesting to see.
Yeah, I did get to play on that one, and it didn't come up too much because we were doing disarray breakthrough, so we had to get to the corners from other corners. But something where you had to fight over the center, but then the center is just a bridge, that would be pretty interesting.
We should probably just go ahead and declare almost all the matches that were played that day were on disarray.
We played a lot of disarray. There was a lot of disarray, which I was fine with. I love disarray.
Every time it came up, we're like, well, I guess it's disarray. Or we would veto something else and be like, well, I disarray again. Son of a.
Yeah.
Ryan, what was your favorite map?
Probably my favorite map. I did really like building the one that you talked about, Ben, the S map. But one of the fun ones to play on was this kind of deserty map that had a lot, and I mean a lot of area terrain. It had a few other pieces of terrain on it for some blocking stuff and a couple barricades, but there was a whole lot of hills that we ruled as area terrain, and then some forest with some movable trees on it that was difficult and area terrain. And it worked out really well because it made some really dynamic play where you could move a lot of infantry around the outer edges of the map in lots of cover. It was quite a bit of fun.
I played that one as well, and I did like it. Having that nice mix of difficult terrain, that mix of light blocking and heavy blocking terrain, hills and walls for things to stand up on or get to hide behind. trying to get the balanced map is difficult. But I think if people play with more of those things and every map has to include all of those things, you end up with a more interesting map.
I feel like the other two maps that we had at the tournament were pretty stock standard. They were not identical to ones we've built before, but we have just the terrain we're limited to. We have like a crashed out cityscape. We made it a little bit denser this time, with a couple kind of what I feel are like kind of handholdy ATST paths, although there weren't that many ATSTs at the tournament. But it was a lot of fun stuff for people bringing environmental gear or grappling hooks with some buildings to scale, because we noticed a lot of our other tables didn't have stuff that was higher than height 1. So this urban map that we built kind of has lots of building options for players that can get up there and mess around.
I think that's our next real goal, is to find some buildings you can climb on that still fit the general theme of the map itself. We have lots of, oh, here's a bombed out building, but it doesn't fit if I'm going to put it on a tree planet.
Right. So let's, I guess, take a minute here at the top of the show or the top of the segment and talk about the list that we played. Ben, what were you playing?
Well, I was playing Veers, 3 stormtroopers with DLTs and extra bodies, 2 snowtroopers with extra bodies, a set of bikes, and I wanted to put an ATST on the table. I got off my super cool spot gloss Weiss. I was like, ooh, it's fantastic. Had the new HQ uplink. I was like, okay, I'll get to use him as often as I want. I was like, oh yeah, this is a good list. So I was trying, you know me, I'm the guy who alternates. I like to try both sides. So I played Rebels a lot. It was time for me to pick up the Imperials again and see what I could do with them.
Cool. Will, how about yourself?
I was also running my Imperials. Pretty similar list to Ben's, trying to do kind of mechanized Veers, except I had a few less upgrades, and I swapped out the ATST for 3 groups of bikes. So I had Veers and 3 bikes, which we've been talking about for a while. So I was excited to finally get that to the table to test it out.
But you played a weird version of it.
I did. I had a lot of spare points that would have been a Scout Trooper squad if they were released, but they're not. So I decided to take a comm jammer on each bike squad.
That's 45 points of comm jamming goodness, correct?
It was 3 cards for 45 points, yes.
All right, just checking. I guess we'll talk about this at the end of the segment, the end of the wrap up. But I'll be anxious to hear if it was worth it, because I've not heard any strong opinions for comm jammer. I don't think a lot of people play it because it is so expensive. I'll be anxious to see how much work you got out of it. So I guess we'll get into it. Round 1. Round 1. Ben, who'd you play?
So it was an Empire versus Empire map. I'm the tournament organizer. I had everything on little slips of paper. I draw out the names, and my opponent was not someone who I wanted to play in round 1. Will, who was my opponent?
I don't know why you didn't want to play this guy. He doesn't win very much. It was me. Yeah, it was cool. We got a STABcast showdown that didn't involve Ryan.
Yay!
Yeah.
We're doing the setup, and Ben and I both have single commander. And on that 3rd slot for deployment is Disarray. And I kind of look at Ben and I go, hey man, let's not play Disarray since it'll mess us both up. Ben immediately looks at me and goes, we're playing Disarray now, Will.
I pulled a wild card. I had to.
It was insanity. We both basically used one corner for infantry in our commander and the other for vehicles. At least we were, until Ben put his ATST with his infantry. So we kind of had just this infantry battle lined up straight across the board. And then my bikes just kind of flew around from a far corner, harassing Ben for most of the game. It was a lot of fun, actually. We're trying to grab boxes, and they all just ended up on one half of the board, so it's just a bunch of troopers running around and dying while there are these boxes of who knows what's in them.
So Will put his bikes in his opposite corner. I put my one set of bikes in my opposite corner. So I realized bikes can't pick up boxes. So all the boxes were on our corners, basically, of the board. So everything is within range 3 of each other. We're just looking at each other. I put my little my ATST. I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna shoot it out there. I look at his commander. I'm like, there's Veers. He's right there. I have an ATST who's looking dead at him
with all the guns.
Oh, all the guns. I'm like, I'm gonna do Weiss. Done. HQ uplink. Gonna get this bad boy out here. I took an aim token just so I could have it, so I get those extra dice. I'm gonna kill him on the very first turn. Will, when did Veers die in our game?
Did he die?
He didn't. Exactly. He didn't die. I put 27 dice from this ATST into Veers' face.
Ben's just rolling all these dice, and he comes up with about 17 surge results, which handily the ATST doesn't surge.
Does not surge on offense, not a bit. I think your Veers had 3 damage. 3 damage at the end.
3 or 4, yeah. So you were close, but it would end up like Ben would just sadly say 3 hits, and I'd say, well, Veers has light cover, so take 1 away to be cheeky. But Ben was at a disadvantage on trooper squads, so the main battle just kind of thinned him out, and I was able to grab 3 boxes to Ben's 1 at the end of the game.
If you check out the Instagram, you'll see pictures of this map. You also see pictures of a particularly upsetting block that made me want to declare Will an enemy of the podcast. He would join a long list.
He can't be an enemy of the podcast. He's on the podcast.
I know. That's why I didn't declare him.
And to bring out the big book of official podcast rules, which only has 2 entries.
We have rules on this show?
Yeah, me and Ben wrote them without you.
It was better that way.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
So while we were battling this thing out, Ryan, what were you doing?
Man, I was having a battle of my own. It had been a long work week for me, and I woke up late and slept through breakfast and didn't have time to get lunch, and then forgot all my dice and command tokens at home. So I took the bye round 1. I also took it. We talked about it the night before, and I took it because I got to play a bunch at Gen Con. So I was going to take the bye anyway, but it worked out that I was hungry. I could go get some lunch, and then I got to use, since I left all my dice, I got to use the handy dandy dice app from FFG for the rest of my games that day. And boy, is that thing unfulfilling. You just want to hold dice in your hands. And like me tapping on my screen a couple times and hitting the roll button is not the same exhilarating feeling as picking up a handful of or 2 of plastic if you're playing with fleet troopers, and picking up 11 dice and throwing them and watching with glee as they clatter, and the tension as you count them instead of the screen just saying, you rolled 2 hits on 10 dice. Good job, bud. So word to the wise, just go buy $50 worth of FFG dice packs instead of the $5 dice app. It's a lot more fun that way.
Sponsored by FFG Dice Packs.
Yeah. So I spent the first 2 hours of the day just kind of eating lunch and trying to find enough command counters in everybody else's kits to make my army work.
So luckily, since I have both armies and I was playing the Empire that day, Ryan had all the stuff he needed.
I had mostly scavenged from you, a few pieces, I think, from Brett, and then the store's demo copy I had to raid. But yeah, I was, I guess I didn't get to talk about my list earlier. So I was playing Rebels, obviously. This was our put your Hans in the air tournament. So I had to play Han. I can't take Leia out of my list. She's just too good. So I had Han, Leia. I ran 2 sets of commandos, 3 sets of commandos, actually. I had a full squad and then 2 demolition teams. And then a whole bunch of troopers with just 1 ATRT with the heavy laser cannon to try to win the ATRT fight. It was a fun list. I'm not so sure how I feel about commandos right now. I'm still experimenting with them. Han, I'm not sure how I feel about. He's interesting. And we'll get to that as I get to talk about my games with him a little bit. But it was a fun infantry spam list with 11 activations. I'm up in the ante from my 10. So it was a fun list to play. But man, can we talk about how those Legion buys take forever? I'm used to X-Wing buys, where it's like 90 minutes and you're back to playing again.
Yeah, it's a long 2 hours.
Yeah, as a man who's taken quite a few of those, you roam around, you look at other people's lists, you comment where you can, as long as it doesn't influence the game. You pep talk some people, you take some photos, and then you're like, well, I've got another hour and 40 minutes left.
I know, right?
And then you just keep doing it again. And then I guess I'll go have lunch, or, hey, I can buy this board game. That's cool. What are you guys playing? Some other random strangers in the store. You roll a D&D character and you play for a little while there and like, oh.
You really can, yeah. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough just to sit idly by for the first 2.5 hours. Like, I left to go get lunch, and I left again and came back, and they were on like turn 2. I was like, well, geez, ow, all right. So yeah, the buys are rough. So Ben, how did you took the loss? How did round 2 treat you?
So starting round 2, we had a player drop, so there are no more buys this round. He was running off to a friend of ours' birthday parties. So I ended up playing against David, and it looked like he had built a list to specifically counter my list.
Those are the best.
He had 2 ATRTs with laser cannons. He had Leia and fleets and 3 sets of troopers. We're playing Disarray and Recover Supplies and Hostile Environment, which for me with an ATRT is fantastic. I can normally, with all 4 shots, I can put suppression just about anywhere I want to. I can set that up, and we kind of do the same thing. He has more activations than me, which coming from a Rebel list is weird. It feels weird to have 8 in, because I felt hamstrung a lot of it. We kind of played chicken. I put everything down but my ATST. So he kind of split his forces to my 2 corners because he's afraid to not have an ATRT point of the right one. He puts his T-47 in his opposite corner because it can fly quickly. And so I line my ATST on my opposite corner, pointed at his people, and I'm just going to make a run for it. So turn 1, I HQ uplink, I take a run at his people. It puts me within range 2 of one set, puts me range 3 of another, and of course range 4 for the mortars. And I think I managed to get all 4 attacks for 4 rounds in a row. Through some skillful card play, for some recover in the right spots.
Ugh.
Wow.
Exactly. Oh, it was very, very gross. I know the T-47 is coming for me, so I know the ATST's time on this planet is not long. And I get all the damage I need to. I wipe 2 squads out very quickly, back to back almost. I put enough mortar rounds into some side troopers. I kill a lot of them with the mortar gun, which was kind of surprising. And then they are so stacked up on suppression that when Leia finally dies, they run right off the board. So I wiped out 2 troopers with the ATST. 2 ran off the board because of suppression when Leia died. It was gross. And so I basically wiped out his human units, his troopers. They couldn't pick up any boxes with the ATRTs or his T-47. And so that's about round 5 or so, and that's when we called it a game. David's defense dice didn't go his way, and I purposely looked to kill all the troopers I could. And so with that being done, I just had to keep 1 box and stay alive, and I could hide behind a pretty big rock for the T-47 that was going to come at me in round 6. I felt a little bad for him. It was a rough game to go his way. His dice did not help him at all, but it was still a good game.
So you've seen it more than I have. Can Leia solo commander work?
If you're going to do it, I think you know my feelings on the T-47. And so you drop that T-47, and then suddenly you have all the points you want for Z6s. Those fleet troopers are lined out to the gills, and you still probably have enough for, maybe a Han in there or some Rebel commandos. I think you get more points out of it if you drop the T-47. I think it's doable. It is.
Well, that wasn't my question. Can you run Leia solo commander?
I don't think so.
Okay. I don't think so either.
She's good. She can give out those dodge tokens, and it did work for him. He kept her in light cover on the area terrain. Like, he did his best to keep her alive, and it took me more shots than I wanted. But once she was dead, the panic sets in so quick because I still had lots more units on my side.
I want someone on the internet out there to prove I'm wrong, but I think Leia's such a good utility piece that you need something else scary up in front of her to take a lot of the heat.
I really think so. There's a solution, I think, that when Leia dies, if you have her as your only commander, which I think you used well in your last game, so I'll let you talk about when we get there. I think there's a solution if you're afraid of losing your commander.
Right. Will, talk to me about game 2.
Yeah, well, first off, Ben, what deployment were you using again?
Oh, yeah, that's Disarray and Recover Supplies and Hostile Environment.
Interesting. I was also playing Disarray round 2. I was playing Dustin, friend of the podcast, Jagged Brush Studios. We had Disarray and Breakthrough, which was insane. I had a pretty big disadvantage. It was Imperial versus Imperial, but Dustin was running Veers and Vader, so he really wasn't as afraid of the Disarray as I had to be with my placement of troopers and all that. So to start, I was kind of in a corner. My bikes were across the map, whereas he got to kind of split his force and just send them both towards my trooper group at the bottom corner. So I was really fighting uphill for most of the game. It was on our impassable water map, but basically Dustin just kind of went down the board edges toward my corner. The water didn't really come up much is what I'm trying to say there. His list was good. He had a bunch of snowtroopers with grenades running around chasing bikes. Like, the bikes would swoop past and then they'd double move and throw concussion grenades at them, just barely in range. It was scary. He dealt with my bikes really well. He sent his 2 bike groups, and he got the draw earlier than mine, so he kind of got to cut down the bike groups, so they were usually limited to 1 bike each when I got to use them, which really hampers a bike's ability. And Vader is terrifying to deal with.
He really is.
I've played him a lot, but never really had to face him because for a while I only got to play against rebels. So having to deal with him with just a bunch of infantry groups it was awful. He showed up like round 3, which was part of the issue because, you think he's going to show up early, but then he just has to waddle his way over. Got a really, really good Master of Evil play to show up. He got like 5 groups with the the suppression tokens, and then he killed Veers. So it was a bad time. Ended up at the beginning of round 6, he was perched to really get a lot of points where I couldn't get much, so we just ended up calling it. So he could go out and take a smoke break, things like that. So we called it with him winning 5-1.
Ooh. So the triple bikes, are they scary if you can knock 1 out of every group?
They lose a lot if you take a bike out. Half the firepower, half the ability to change the game, like, it's a big hit. I don't think it's as bad as rolling on that damage chart, but it hampers them quite a bit.
There's a big difference between 3 and 6 dice, and that big difference is heavy cover.
Oh, yeah.
Anything in cover, 1 bike really can't do much to.
Once it's down to 1 bike, you're really hunting characters that are out in the open or just trying to throw suppression around. So, Ryan, how did your round 2 game go?
Round 2, I got to play. He's close to becoming a nemesis. I don't know if he's there yet. He will be soon. I got to play Brett from Sunsphere South. I get to play Brett all the time. We practice together a lot.
Brett's our most consistent traveler.
Yeah, he really is. And he's a really good player. He's a darn good player. The thing that's infuriating about Brett is we play almost identical lists without really consulting with each other too much. But they're different enough to show our own unique flavors as players. So, obviously, Han's out. Commandos are out. So we're both bringing them. The difference being he's got 2 ATRTs. I've only got 1. And he cut, I think, a core activation. I think he was only running 5 cores instead of 6. But he's running snipers. I'm running demo troopers. And so it's kind of a clash of ideas. He's got 2 heavy laser cannons. I've just got 1. We're playing breakthrough, disarray, rapid reinforcements on the weird S-wall map. So we're having to either run through a giant field with not a lot of cover in the middle, with difficult terrain, or we're having to go hop over walls. So it was a really interesting game that goes back and forth. We're both trying to pull out all the cute little rebel tricks that we know how to do, almost matching each other's command cards round for round. I'm using No Time for Sorrows to try to get my bombardiers in cool places to throw det charges and run away. He's using it to get his snipers into the position they need to be. We're both shooting our spaceships at the same time. But we kind of squared off to where it was his Han versus my Leia and vice versa. So that was an interesting matchup. And the way me and Brett's games always go is he both positionally and I think dice variance wise takes an early lead over me. And then things cut back the other way. So turns probably 1 through 3, 1 through 2, he had some really good rolls that I couldn't roll a defense die on the first 2 to 2.5 turns to save my life. And then the dice turned a little bit. I got some really cool bombs off that I just didn't roll damage for. It was really sad. But it was a really tight, close, scrappy game because it's breakthrough to where you're like shooting as much as you can until you have to stop and run. And then your opponent has to decide, am I also going to run or am I going to turn and shoot you in the back because I think I can kill you before you reach the touchdown line? So it's kind of how I think about it is the Hail Marys of football. And we played this really scrappy game. And this is where you know where Brett is not as a player, but as a gamer. If Brett slow plays just a bit, just a touch, and we only play 4 turns, Brett wins. But we play at a good clip, and I'm not even going to say just a good clip. We play fast. Because if you've played with me, I like to play fast. I don't like to waste any time. You know, one of my things I like to do is I like to try to keep my opponent on edge by always putting the ball in their court, that they're the ones having to think, that they're the ones having to make decisions, just to kind of keep the tempo up. Brett's a good guy, keeps pace with me, and we get to 5 rounds where if we play 4, he wins. If we play 5, I win, because we ended the game 2-2, but I won on points. Me and Brett were talking a little bit about it afterwards. We played rapid reinforcements, and I think that's where Brett lost the game. If we take out any dice and we take out any decision making, because I think the only time he made a bad decision was with rapid reinforcements. I put my fleet troopers in because why wouldn't you? The trick with it is there were no good places for me to drop my dudes with rapid reinforcements. Because we were playing disarray, there were very few places that I could legally place them. It was kind of funny because we were just all spread out all over the map. Especially disarray with breakthrough, where you've got enemy units charging towards you as well as staying to play defense in their own backline. He put into his rapid reinforcements his two-man sniper teams because he was trying to get me to play Leia's 1-pip card first. So because you can just ace those 2-man teams right off the board with coordinated bombardment, and then your opponent's down 2 activations and close to 90 points, or over 90 points. Which he did. I put those out there, but those were 2 turns where his snipers weren't shooting. So it was tough, and I think that's what swung the game my direction. It was a really scrappy game since we were both playing 11 activations, and even our ATRTs, which normally get to throw a whole bunch of dice, we're running heavy laser cannons. So it was a whole bunch of dice pools that consisted of probably like less than 6 dice, 5 or 6 dice, and then my fleet troopers, which rolled a bunch because they're fleet troopers. But it was a lot of fun. Han did some interesting things. Han's really good at breakthrough because he just sits and plays that defensive role and just plays like a sweeper, where anything that gets close to his deployment zone, he just goes bang bang and double shoots the 2 groups moving towards you. So if you're playing Han, you probably want to try to prioritize breakthrough a little bit because he's so good playing it defensively. But it was 2-2, and I was up by about 150 points because he had a lot of my activations on like 1 or 2 models. I managed to get both of his commanders. He only got my Leia. It was a tough, close game.
So disarray. You two both played breakthrough. I played recover the supplies twice on my disarrays with Will, of course. So that's 2 sets of disarrays. And of course, round 3, someone else dropped. So now we're back to uneven. So I do what good TOs do. I took the bye on that one. And so, gentlemen, how did your round 3s look? Let's start with Ryan here.
So with Dustin beating Will, that means I got to play him because I was undefeated. He was undefeated, although I had the bye, so I can't take too much credit there. So Dustin brought his list. We played intercept transmissions on hostile environment on disarray.
So much disarray.
Yep, it was that kind of a day. Man, intercept the transmissions on disarray is just action from the start. I've gotten to play that configuration a handful of times with different conditions, and I want the people out in internet land to listen to me. If you're listening, you can hear my voice, and you're playing disarray with intercept transmissions, send at least 2 units to the middle point. Everybody forgets about that middle point on turn 2. And I think that's what got me the game. Dustin committed really heavy to the 2 outside points that were closer to our deployment zones. By the first scoring round, I had snuck just Han up to the middle point, where we had kind of had these 3 pieces. It kind of was like a triangle of death. These 3 pieces of heavy cover surrounding the middle point, and so Han was just kind of lodged in there with his little pew-pew gun, holding it like the Alamo. It was Leia versus Vader, and then my Rebel Bombardiers and ATRT versus Veers, and then Han versus anything that got too close. And it was a knockdown, drag-out fight. I managed to win the flank that I committed heavier to rather quickly, and securing it and the middle point for the first scoring round. I managed to tie Dustin on the point where he committed most of his forces, including Vader and 2 sets of snowtroopers, with an additional group of stormtroopers. During the first score, I managed to tie it up. So I was ahead during the victory point race 2-0, which was a huge help going into the second scoring round, because I knew I was probably going to lose at least 2 of the points because I only had the middle point with just Han. But Leia, with some rebel troopers and that nimble keyword and take cover, was able to... Obviously, I never won the point that Vader was on, but I was able to hold it out so long that he was never able to pull his troopers to that middle point. And I think his mistake was he should have abandoned a few of those units from that point, knowing that what was left could have cleaned it up. But he wanted to try to get it done faster and finish the job. And he had some snow troopers that had just taken too many losses by the time they decided to pull to that middle point that I managed to clean up the game. We got to play all 6 rounds. I don't remember exactly the final score, but it was my army was quickly deteriorating by the time it was over, but I was still managing to collect the one flank I did win. And I think I tied up the middle for the double point score, and he won the last one. But Leia and her stalwart troopers bought enough time by literally throwing themselves at Vader. He kept trying to kill Leia, and I would just engage Vader with my troopers, so he couldn't just like waddle and attack. He had to attack those guys first, and I got to control where his Vader lightsaber went. And that really helped me slow him down and pull the game out.
So I got to watch a lot of that game because I was on the bye, and it was Leia defended a lot longer because of those strategic plays. Throw some bodies in front of Vader. He's got to kill them off first, which means he can't throw that lightsaber. Han Solo did some amazing things from that center point. He danced around some heavy terrain. I just was killing troopers left and right.
He eventually got both of my commanders before that game was over. And I think Bennett alluded to this point earlier. One of the things that let me tie that middle point, and really even my secure point as my forces were utterly crumbling, because he got both of my commanders, is the ability to promote when you lose both your commanders. And now that we have Rebel commandos and you can promote those guys, you still have another Bravery 2 bubble instead of just a Bravery 1 bubble. Going to all your friends was awesome. It was a really big help, and I think it really helped swing the game in a couple places where I didn't have to rally or die, because we were playing hostile environment, and so those rally rolls really were scary at times. But having that extra Bravery 2 commander, in quotation marks, once Han and Leia both died was a big help. Will, talk to me about Game 3.
Well, in round 3, I was matched up against Brett from Sunsphere South, declared a frenemy of the podcast by Ben, who actually won our painting competition for the day with his Chocobo ATRT. So
yeah,
congrats to Brett. These are elite prizes, painting competitions. It's always an honor.
That's the second Knoxville painting contest that Brett has knocked Ben out of, by the way.
I have nothing to say on that matter at this time.
But yeah, we played Intercept the Transmissions on not Breakthrough. It was Advanced Positions. So something that wasn't Breakthrough. Hooray! But it was Advanced Positions, which means we played 7 turns of Legion.
You really need like 2 hours and 20 minutes for a game time if you're going to play Advanced Positions.
Yeah, and we'd gotten kind of casual with the playing at this point, so we probably didn't have a 2-hour limit on this. We just kind of played it out.
You had a 2-hour limit. I just didn't set the clock until you had gotten through most of setup.
Yeah, we weren't rushing through this, is what I'm trying to say. But once we got going, Brett, like you were saying, Brett plays at a good pace, and I was keeping up with him. He did the same thing you were talking about. We played Rep and Reinforcements, and he sent both his snipers in to his reserves, which ended up pretty good because he basically got to set them up on top of big terrain pieces and snipe down at my units. But in those first 2 turns, I basically annihilated his trooper groups because he only had 4. He had 4 groups with an extra body each, and I think that was all. I used my bikes and just sent him in there to murder the troopers, and I think he had like 2 groups left by the time his snipers joined the game, and by that point I was just flying around with my bikes killing his commanders, and it was a silly game.
Again, I watched this game from the sidelines. It really was a silly game. Now, Brett had lots of fun with this game.
He did.
Because Brett's only real goal here was to shoot things with those sniper commandos.
And he did. The commandos showed up and both just locked on to Veers' helmet. And it took him 4 rounds, but he did snipe my commander to death, which gave him infinite glee. And then we're going into turn 6, and I'm like, hey, Brett, there's no real way this ends except me winning. Do you want to just call it? And he's like, oh, no. We're going to play this out, Will. You're going to keep moving your pieces, even though it's pointless. And took his strange enjoyment in that. So By the end of it, he had broken me mentally because I was so tired of playing. So he took victory in that.
Will's not used to having to play a whole 3 games of Legion in a day.
It's stressful.
We talk later in the episode, or previous episodes, about building that stamina. Will hasn't quite gotten there yet.
Well, I just wasn't used to having a Saturday off, so it was nice.
So, Will, let me ask you. You played against Han Solo here. How did that feel being on the Imperial side of Han Solo?
Han Solo is super annoying.
Yep, that's about the right way to sum it up.
He's not broken. He's not like ruining the game. He's not, this OP powerhouse. But he just chips away at you. He's just like, oh, 2 damage there that you can't block. 2 damage there that you can't block. See you next round. He's just poking you in the side saying, hey, those troopers over there, they're going to lose a guy. Yep. He's just a thorn in your side till you deal with him, which is hard to do.
At one point, Han had 4 suppression. You threw a whole bunch of shots at him. Of course, he removed one of them. He re-rolled for his ability. Then it became his turn, and then he cleared 2 of those suppression, which still gave him the cover and the ability to re-roll his defense dice. You couldn't kill him.
Han just walking around with heavy cover is so dumb.
It's awesome.
He's walking around with his stupid camo cloak like, you can't see me. You throw dice at him and you get like 1 damage and it doesn't matter.
How did you feel about his command cards from the other side of the table? Because to me, that's his key. Like, his kit's okay. His command cards are what makes him the real nuisance.
Brett used them in an odd way. Like, he waited to use the choose a different card until I didn't have any Veers cards left.
Oh, okay. That's weird.
It's like round 4, and I play push, and he's like, haha, you must choose a different card. And I was like, all right, I choose ambush. So I think at that point, Brett was just kind of playing to have fun. So I didn't really get a tactical assessment of Han besides him just poking me and being annoying.
All right, that's fair.
But at the end of the day, I took a long look at my comm jammers and realized I had jammed about 3 things. 2 of which were in Ben's game, which I did flaunt at him victoriously.
But the 2 things you jammed were troopers, and all I had left at that point were, because I'd already commanded my commander and my ATST. So my bag was filled with nothing but trooper tokens. I was pretty okay.
Yeah, by the time you get like in the mix, normally the game's gotten to a point where orders aren't as important as the early game. So, comm jammers, at least running 3 of them, I do not recommend.
So you heard it here first, kids. Stay in school and don't use comm jammers.
I will say the HQ uplink I thoroughly enjoyed in my games. It made a huge difference on that ATST, and I felt like I got my 250 points out of it.
Okay, this part's directly to Brett. I know you're listening. You enjoyed those HQ uplinks too much, man. You were having too much fun ordering your units without ordering them. I don't know why you were having so much fun with that.
What I enjoyed is Brett's 2-man sniper teams were the ones with the HQ uplinks. And so every turn, all they were doing was like shoot and then ready the HQ uplink. Shoot, ready the HQ uplink. And I don't know that he was clearing suppression with that refresh. I don't know that he was... Like, you really need that aim token if you're only rolling 2 dice. You really need that aim token. Because I saw him blank that roll a lot.
All he was doing was making sure he could use HQ uplink for 4 turns.
Did he even order his units? In my game, he didn't order his snipers first. It's like they could have waited to come out of the bag. It wasn't like they were the priority.
No, he just placed them face up and went, ha-ha, and then didn't use them till later in the turn.
All right, yeah. So use HQ uplink as you see fit. My advice would be find places to put it with other cards that you need to refresh.
I think it makes a lot more sense like how Ben was using it.
Ryan, let me ask you about the emergency stims, the other new card that came out. How'd you use it on Han?
So yeah, I had it on my Han Solo. It's there for his, I believe it's called like reckless diversion or distracting behavior, whatever his 2-pip card is that makes you shoot him. It's there for Han just to sit there and, like Will said, be annoying for 1 more turn. I didn't have anybody today, which just I think kind of makes the cards worth its points. Like, decide they wanted to put the extra 2 damage into Han, but it meant that he just sat there and he got to do all of his shenanigans for 1 turn more. Because there's something special about having 4 damage on Han 2 damage on emergency stims, and then playing his 2-pip card that says you now have to shoot Han, so he's absorbing extra damage with all of his cover and all of his rerolls. I like it on him a lot. I don't know that I'm going to always put it on Han, but if you've got the extra 8 points, I can see it. Depending on how the medics work when they come out next year, I could see it becoming a very valuable upgrade. Otherwise, I think Han and Luke are going to be the only places that we really see it, when you really need to keep Luke alive through that other big lightsaber attack. But it was a good card. Didn't love it, but it was a good card.
I do want to go back and give Brett credit on one of his Han cards. He used that distracting behavior on Veers' bombardment turn.
Oh, so he had to shoot the big gun at Han?
Yup, which did like 1 damage and was sad.
Yeah, that's not what you want.
Well, it was kind of revenge, because earlier in the game, his Leia bombardment did 0 damage.
Ooh.
Ouch.
He shot it at a bite group and 2 trooper groups, and all that happened was suppression. It was glorious.
All in all, though, a very fun tournament. I had a blast, even though I only got to play 2 games and an obnoxiously long bye. It was a fun time, fun couple hours. Ben didn't win a painting award, so that was good on that front too. And yeah, it was a day we got to waste playing Legion.
I'm going to drive to some place like Nashville and not take any of you, because they always ride in my car. In case you didn't know this, faithful listener, they're always in my car. And I'm just not going to take them, and I'm going to go win something someplace else. It'll be fantastic.
Not a painting award, though.
Will Heim, Enemy of the Podcast. As a TO, what happens when I take the bye that late in the day? I go pack up all the stuff for the tables that aren't played anymore because we have people drop. I watch those last games, officiate as I need to. It's always a fun day. Anytime we get out to put some models on some tables, I always enjoy myself.
Yeah, it's always a good time down at Sci-Fi City. Hope to have some new units out for the next one, so we'll see.
So as always on the STABcast, we like to take a look at our deployment, the start of the game area. So, are we blind? Deploy the garrisons! Will, how do you drop off your deployments? How do you start in the deployment phase? You're putting out troops. What do you do?
Yeah, usually you want to start with probably your least impactful unit. It's kind of like you don't want to show your hand too early. I usually start with my smallest or cheapest trooper unit, or the most obvious one where there's an objective right next to the deployment zone. You just pop them down. Something like that, so that way your opponent can't see that you've placed don't drop your ATST first, then your opponent knows pretty much what you're going to be doing.
But ideally, isn't your ATST probably in a pretty obvious location to begin with?
Sometimes. Depends on the map.
I'm pretty much the same way as you are. I find the least point cost is normally a trooper. I find the clear, easy objective he clearly knows I'm going to. It's predictable. No one knows anything more that they already didn't know. So I'm like, yeah, here we go. These troopers right here. Blam.
Yeah, I think the key for choosing, especially in the early rounds of deployment, choosing what to put shouldn't really be based on its point value or its impact. I think you want to save your tricks for last. A lot of times with that ATST, with the T-47, or sometimes even with the commander or your key objective grabbers, put down your obvious choices first. Places where units are obviously going to go ahead and just get them down, even if they are high-value targets. Keep your tricks, the things that you're going to try to be sneaky with or clever or unexpected, save those for your last rounds of activation to keep your opponent guessing, to try to catch things out. Or something like speeder bikes, that's going to be a very opportunistic unit, something that you might try to counter what your opponent's playing. But the stuff that you know where it's going to go just to make your strategy happen, always drop that stuff first and save your flexible options for later.
So when you see your opponent drop their flexible option, you should really whisper to yourself, "Clever girl."
Or not. You do what you want. You do you.
Especially for Imperials, bikes are a really nice flexible reaction unit. You watch for that big thing you want to make sure you can counter, and then you use your bikes in a way that either discourages it or makes your opponent acknowledge that your bikes are a major threat.
This is a trick that I picked up from Ryan, and I hate to give him credit because Lord knows his ego is already big enough.
Hey!
But if you leave a space inside your troop deployment, so you can place the commander unit also kind of intact there, but not too far back. Because if you place a trooper unit, then a trooper unit, and sometimes that means your commander is almost a full movement template behind your own guys. You leave a space for them because you can easily arrange your trooper units. That way you can drop Leia right in the mix, bump, and she's right near the front where she can move quickly if she needs to.
Yeah, hand out them dodge tokens. Yeah, and kind of in the same vein, I did this a lot when I first started playing, and I still do it from time to time if I'm like trying to think too many moves ahead. If you've got ground vehicles, always give them a path out. The only way that you can't, that you don't have to worry about that if you want to hem them in with troopers, like, because you usually want your troopers up front and your ATST or your ATRTs behind them. The only way you can really get around that is if you know on turn one, either those troopers are going to be getting command tokens and moving early in the round, or that walker vehicle is going to be getting a command token and can move once the coast is clear. Sometimes displacing on the first turn isn't a huge deal, but sometimes it really can be. And it's an easy mistake to make, to pull that ATRT, to pull that ATST out of the bag and be like, well, I guess I'm going to displace 2 trooper squads because I screwed up and I just wasn't thinking. I've done that way too many times. So unless you have a specific plan, always leave a ground vehicle, whatever vehicle you have's base width wide enough for them to make an escape from your deployment zone.
Yeah, the first few times I used my ATST, troopers were always in the way of that gigantic base. Just ended up stomping on them the whole time.
Yeah, with your ground units, the big movement ones, yeah, they walk through stuff. And so many a time an ATRT has knocked out a unit. They got moved by my opponent to some place I didn't want them, and now they got a suppression token at the start of the game. Heaven forbid it's hostile environment, and now it's really hard to get that thing to go away.
And as far as committing to the board presence, I really try to maintain balance. Like, I think you can really endanger yourself if you leave one flank super weak, but sometimes that stronger flank can be a good counterbalance, but usually that weaker flank just lets you down faster than you ideally want it to, and then you're all kinds of messed up. And then really, once I've got objectives and a good balance, I'm just kind of reacting to my opponent's placement.
See, I'm more of a commitment guy. Let's grab the objective while I can. Things like key positions or intercept transmissions, I'll try to flood the middle of the board with units, basically creating a screen that protects my backfield. And so I'll keep a unit back there if I need to, but then I've created this giant wall of flesh and robot bones to kind of block up the middle to force him to fight me to get through that. And if he fights me and gets through that, I probably already lost. So, I mean, that's like that strong middle wall there keeps those 2 units on my side of the field that I can control. For things like recover supplies, I'll let units do things a little bit later. I don't have to pick up the box to the end, and I can just kind of have troops in the right spot to set things up. But then I can, take them when I need to before the game's over.
Yeah, that's scary to me though, Ben. Like, a lot of times I like to dictate the pace of the game by grabbing that box early and saying, no, you shoot this guy. You don't shoot Luke. You don't shoot my ATRT. You shoot this guy with a box. And it really frees you up to maybe move some other things around. But I kind of on the same idea. I like to commit to objectives a little bit differently. Unlike Will, I don't really think a balanced approach is always the best approach. And we're going to use recover supplies kind of as an example because it has the most variables. It has 5 objectives that you have to commit to. And a lot of times the way I like to think about that objective is I have to commit to 3 of them and I can ignore the other 2. When you commit to an objective, if you go with a very balanced approach, you'll barely win or you'll barely lose. If you commit heavy on one and light on another, and your opponent goes with a more balanced approach, hopefully you'll be able to plaster through that one flank where you went very heavy to be able to bring reinforcements to that lighter flank in a very quick manner. Even if you went with a balanced approach and you managed to barely win, it's probably turn 5, if not turn 6, by the time those reinforcements can go and help your other engagements. What you want to be thinking about is grabbing objectives with as few points as possible. I want to commit as few of my activations as I can to grab each particular box. So what I'll usually like to do is I'll load 2 of them, and then I'll just send 1 or maybe 2 activations against another objective and just say, you've got better things to do than to deal with these 2 little lone units while you fight the rest of my army, pressuring these other 2 points. So I think you need to try to commit and make your opponent play your game while trying to squeak out a few objectives as cheaply as possible. And both of you are going to be doing this, and so you just have to make sure you get your cheap objectives cheaper. And instead of a balanced approach, I think that's brought me a lot of success, especially on intercept transmissions. don't load each of the 3 objectives evenly, even if you've got battle lines, but front load 2 of them and work towards that.
But see, that's why I think if you take the middle, often I can then spin off a unit to go back into my field to pick up an objective.
Yeah.
Because I have enough of a wall covered there that we can break through that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Will, your thoughts on this?
Sounds like y'all are playing 4D chess over there.
Well, if you're taking a look at pictures of our map deployments that we placed up on our Instagram, that's where you should go. A lot of the things that we're talking about here come from our game photos that we post to the Instagram. Lots of great pictures out there. So come join us on our social media. Take a look at that.
Yeah, as far as social media, we've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Try to post all sorts of cool stuff to these places. We share news articles, things like that. If you're listening to us on iTunes, give us a good rating, helps our visibility, things like that. At all these sites, we are at STABcast.
You should also check out our Twitch account at STABcast. With the Invader League quickly approaching, we're going to try to start probably every other week. I'm going to try to start streaming some games if I can, life permitting. But you should also check out the Legion Discord server and our Teespring shop if you want some cool STABcast swag. We have Sunsphere Tactical Attack Brigade t-shirts as well as STABcast shirts. And if you're into X-Wing, you can get some t-shirts for the Sunsphere Defense Fleet, the local Knoxville X-Wing group as well. And please send us some questions to swstabcast@gmail.com. We'd love to do some Q&A every episode, and we get a few people who regularly correspond with us, but I'd like to cast our net a little bit wider. And so tonight, talking about casting our net wider, we want to talk about some success that we've had in building a better Bothan spy net without all of them dying. How do we have such a great X-Wing and Legion community in such a small town? You know, Knoxville's not a small town, but for big cities, it's not very big. And we've got a pretty active player group. So we want to pass on some of the wisdom that we've had in building our local community to be a tight-knit group of gamers that are very active and engaged. So we want to go over some of the few points that we have found to help us do that. And the first one is there are 3 hosts of the show and not one. You need more than one point guy. If you're the only guy leading your local club, you need to find a couple other guys to help share the load with. Or girls, you know, whatever. That way, if somebody can't make it one night, the group doesn't die. You know, if I can't make a Wednesday night for our local Legion time, that's okay. Will or Ben or somebody else can be there, and it's a friendly face, and somebody knows, a new prospective player knows that somebody's going to be there. If it just lives and dies on your schedule, it's probably going to be very slow to grow.
Building a community is hard work. It really is. But to get that community, you have to leave your house. I know it's cool to play at home. I know you got all your cool toys there. If you're one of those terrain builders, or you're like our buddy Scott, who's got enough terrain material to build whatever he wants, it's beautiful in your home, but you got to get out. When you're in a public place, people see you playing. You put on that friendly face, you can sell your game. And now, yes, you're making your local game store a little bit of money, but you're also making people who want to play this game with you. And so they'll show back up. You got to get out there. Let people know that you're playing in your community.
Yeah, and it's an important thing to make sure you schedule a regular night. And that way, whoever's at your local store or wherever you do schedule this, they know where to recommend people to if they come asking. Like, for instance, when I'm working and people come in and say, how's your Legion group? And I say, oh, it's great. They meet every Wednesday. You should come out and see them. You know, it's really easy to say, you know, where to find the people that play the game, where to find information, things like that. If it's a smaller store, you could even ask to kind of print a sign with contact info and leave it at the gaming store. I know we've got a few guys that do that with their groups, so your local store shouldn't have any issue with something like that.
I think the thing that took our X-Wing group from just 6 or 8 guys and absolutely catapulted it to, I don't know how many members the Knoxville X-Wing community has, but it's I think it's over 200 at this point. We made a Facebook group, and then it started off as just like Knoxville X-Wing, and it was easy to find, but it was very bland. Find a way to spice it up. Everybody wants to belong to something. I can't tell you how many players we have in our X-Wing group and coming into our Legion group because we have a cool name, even though they're silly, the Sunsphere Tactical Attack Brigade and the Sunsphere Defense Fleet, because they're long and cumbersome, and I find that kind of stuff hilarious. Get a logo made up. I paid a local graphic design guy like $100 to make our logo. They spent some cool time on it, and we get to put it on t-shirts and cards and hand it out. Everybody wants to belong. I can't tell you how many players we've recruited just because we gave them a sticker. And then they went home, they thought about it, they saw the sticker, and then they went and bought a core set. Everybody wants to belong to a group, and it makes it you more than just those guys that play Legion at the game store. It gives you something identifiable. Getting matching t-shirts and stuff. It took our group and multiplied it tenfold easy.
Just stickers alone. And I know that sounds crazy, but we were able to leave them at our local game store. So when someone came and bought stuff, the game store would give them our sticker. It would go in their bag with their purchases, which means they came to our Facebook page, which means they started looking at what nights we were playing. They showed up, and that increases your community, people who want to try this game that you love so much. For us, our play night's our play night. We also try to be there on other days. For our X-Wing group and our Legion group, Thursday was our night for X-Wing. We also showed up a lot of times on Saturdays. Just, hey, I'm free today. There's not a ball game that I want to watch and the weather's kind of bad. I'll be at the game store. Who wants to show up? Now, sometimes that means you sit there by yourself till someone does show up. But there's nothing wrong with that, because then you can put your material on the table. People can see what it looks like. You can offer them a quick demo game. The best way to build a community is to be a salesman for your game. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, and something that kind of helps out with that is FFG has great support with the organized play events. It's really easy for local game stores to be a part of that, so once you've got a good 3 or 4 players, enough to have a decent tournament, you can ask your local game store to try to order a kit or two, and, as long as y'all pay back the cover cost, which isn't much, it turns into a great event.
If you don't have a local gaming store to support you, but you have a play space where you can go and play, or the game store just won't order the kits because it's too much work, if you have a Facebook page and you show some activity on it, you can list yourself as a gaming club and get in touch with FFG Organized Play. You don't have to be a store to do it. So word to the wise there.
One of the other ways you can increase the organized play events for your local area is to go to other people's organized play events outside your local area. Not only does this build great friendships inside your own gaming group, I've put lots of strangers in my car and driven 2 to 3 hours away to go to Nashville or Johnson City or Chattanooga or Atlanta to go play in other people's events. And you meet people who are like you. They love the game that you're playing. And so then it's like, hey, well, I hear Knoxville's doing this event. We'll drive up for it. We've managed to get Atlanta people, those snobby Atlanta people, to drive all the way to our stores to come play with us.
Throwing shade.
No shade. When you have a presence, they will send other people their way. Oh, are you moving to Knoxville? Come play at their store. When people know you that you're there, they can send you people who live in your area. Oh, I know those guys.
Yeah, we have so many people that we've got stories like, hey, remember that time we found Keith up in the mountains? And, you just recruit people that you never think of running into, and then they become part of your gaming community.
Yeah, or someone at an event that you're playing at, a couple towns over, a couple counties over. They have a friend who lives in your city who might also be interested in this game, but didn't know other people played. So he calls and says, hey, you should go check out their gaming night. I talked to this dude. He came to our store. They play on this night, and you can find them here. I can't tell you how many people we've gotten to join our groups just from going other places, and they know people in our town that they connect with us. It's super cool.
We had a guy come down from Niagara Falls, Canada, played with us. So when I went to Ontario, Canada last summer, I said, hey, where's some game stores in the route that I was traveling? I took my X-Wing with me. I played a couple games in some stores. It seems like a weird international community, but it led me to other people who play this game because we went to other places.
And honestly, this show, in a weird way, to get off on a bit of a tangent, was born on those trips to other places. We just started having long conversations about X-Wing and Legion and the games that we were traveling to play. And he said, you know what? We should have these conversations on the internet and record them because maybe other people would be into them. And so far, they seem to be, and it's been a lot of fun for us. And we still travel all over.
We are more and more shocked each day.
Yeah. But one of the other tips that you can use to help grow your community, and I am terrible at this one, if you follow the STABcast Twitter or Facebook or whatever, it is deathly quiet. But our local play group isn't always. You need to keep your social media active. You need to put 2 or 3 posts out a week just to keep it on people's news feeds. kind of like the same idea of having people belong to a club or a group or something bigger than just, Legion game night. That way, when they're looking through their social media or their email or their Twitter or whatever, they'll see from time to time and they'll be reminded that, oh yeah, Wednesday night at Sci-Fi City is Legion. I should go to that. It refreshes it and it keeps it on the tips of people's tongues at the front of their mind. So always just keep your local page active with discussions, with polls, with questions, with opinion, and always keep it open and inviting, and don't poo-poo on anybody's answers, even if they're wrong, Landon.
I'm a big believer in that Facebook group. It's great conversation. I personally don't have a lot of time to spend on our Facebook page. I read a lot of it. But when you have the conversation, it could be about a list. Hey, listen, I'm thinking about trying this. Or I painted this and it's kind of ugly, but I wanted to share it in its ugliness. How fun is this?
Yeah. That's every photo I've ever posted.
It really is. It's like with our X-Wing group, it was, hey, listen, I'm thinking about this. What can I combo with this thing, this piece of idea? And we'd have a small conversation about it. If you're doing League Play is a great place for your Facebook page. We did for a little while people challenging each other using wrestling memes.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It kept the group talking, which kept it on their minds, which kept players out and playing more.
Another thing to promote growth and new people coming is that try bat lists. Bring stuff that's not ready. No one who walks up is going to criticize that stormtrooper over there is not fully painted. Just get yourself out there, try new and exciting things, so that way, if somebody's new, you don't have your tournament prep stomp list that's going to just tell them, hey, you can show up, but I'm going to stomp you because I play tournaments. You don't want to be that guy. Try to be inclusive, try to be more open to new players, and teach them the game by using maybe less efficient combinations.
Sometimes that's the hardest thing for some people to do, is to play the list that may not be so great.
Yep.
But there's nothing that shuts down new players than getting their behind stomped.
Yep.
In a way they don't understand why they lost the game.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and for me, it's in Legion, it creates an interesting paradox where a lot of the things, like if you're a new player and you're coming in and you're going to buy a core set and maybe trade half of a core set with a friend and then one of every expansion, guess what? If you're playing Rebels, you have to put a T-47 in your list to get to 100 points. To play these hyper optimized competitive lists, a lot of times you need a lot of buy-in. You need a lot of just upgrade packs to get certain cards or to get that extra squad of troopers. And so play lists, if you know there's going to be new players at your game night, play lists that someone who just coming in can compete with. Play down points if you have to. And just play and have fun and keep it cool and casual. If you're always in super try-hard mode all the time, you'll force people out.
Yeah, I mean, if they're just walking up with nothing and saying, I want to try this game, there's always that starter game in the rule set. It's balanced for two players just to learn everything.
It is. This is a game where painted models is kind of the norm, but that can be something that's very intimidating to the brand new player. So if you show that you haven't quite painted your models yet, or I've just got these guys stuck together with some glue and some gum, and you can put these on the table too, buddy. Oh, look, here's something I kind of tried. Or if you're Ryan, here's something I tried really hard at and it looks terrible, but somehow won an award for.
Second place Gen Con, baby.
If you show that all skill levels play this game, people are more likely to get involved with it. If it's not a group of tryhards who just ruffle stomping all over all the town, people will come out for it. Friendliness and casualness is the key. Speaking of that friendly and casualness, sometimes if you've got the stuff, if you've got the finances, or because you like to play both sides of the list, and we're clearly talking about me here, bring extra stuff for people to borrow from. I don't know how often I've thrown open my kit, so yeah, go pick up that model. What do you need to make this list right? Go ahead, go grab this. You want to try something new? Pull it out of my box. Not a problem with that. I carry all sorts of stuff to an X-Wing tournament. I carry boxes and bags of stuff to Legion tournaments because people want to try something or don't quite have all the things they need to make it work. I'm like, sure, let's pull this out of my bag. Put it on the table.
When Ben comes to the store, he brings 2 or 3 fishing tackle boxes full of minis, and he's just like, what do you want? Use it. Here you go. I've seen a lot of people that are just super excited to try something they didn't want to buy yet. Just be like, oh, wow, I can just try this. And, it just really opens it up for a lot of people who might not have everything yet.
Yeah, if you're going to be that community point person, or one of them, I should say, you've got to be willing to let other people use your stuff. as much as you can. I'm not saying you have to have a whole extra army with you all the time, although if you can, that'd be awesome. But at least just enough for them to try that, that extra snowtrooper in their list, or that second ATST they've heard about on the internet. Just creating that openness so that they don't have to be super intimidated and they can play what they want to play, even if they don't have it all painted and put together. It will go a lot of distance in getting you some credit with these new players.
One of the things we're lucky enough to have locally is that we have several stores that are very open to our play groups, which really helped out when we were first starting because, the more you can get yourself out there, the further net you can cast, the more people you'll draw in. Like, we used to play each week at a different store. We'd be in East Town, then over in West Town it's Turkey Creek, then we'd go to Maryville, and then we'd go to Oak Ridge and repeat that every month. And not everyone kept up with us, but the three of us at least were trying to rotate and get the most exposure we could for our group.
And so if you live in a city that's kind of long, Knoxville sitting across Interstate 40 and 75 has spread out quite a bit. I regularly commute 30 minutes to get to my game stores, depending on where they happen to be. But that's because if people know that we're coming, then they'll show up for it. And if you want to be the point person, you want to be the face of that group, which is great because it builds players for you. You kind of sometimes have to make that time sacrifice to do it.
And the single thing that I think will get you the most new players and get you the most active is your friendly local gaming store staff. Befriend them. Don't just be the Legion guy, but get to know them. Get them invested in your group for more than just a sale. They are going to do so much work for you in telling people about where you guys meet, what day you guys meet, what to look for, what they need to bring, because we can't be at the game stores 24/7, but they can. They're going to do the most reach for your group in recruiting new players. They don't have to have a working understanding of how the game works. They just have to know who you are, that you're friendly and fun to be around, that you're good to them, and they will send you so many new players. It's unreal. That is the single best thing you can do is befriend your local gaming store staff, and they'll do most of the legwork for you.
It worked so well for us, we got Will a job at the local game store.
Yeah.
Got your man on the inside.
Can't say enough about the staff. Like I said, if your local gaming store is going to support you like that, because you support them and you're friendly and you're open, they're willing to send you people. But if you're snide or heavy-handed or you whack new players with the heavy beat stick because you've been playing for a long time, they're less likely to send players your way. It's like, yeah, we got a guy who plays, but yeah. So if you can impress your local gaming store, they become impressed with you. They will generate crowds to come play with you. Well, it's come to that time in this week's show to head on down to Imperial Corner. Will, let's talk about the prequels that we've just recently learned about at Gen Con. What are you excited for?
Well, before the Empire, we had the Republic. I think your clone trooper armor is going to be pretty cool. It is more white armor, so there's that. But I think with clones, you get a lot more interesting color options, and you can do stripes and cool unit colors, especially towards the end of the Clone Wars series. They started doing some really crazy clone paint schemes that you could really get some cool results with. I am worried on how they're going to differentiate them from the Stormtroopers. I'm thinking they're going to be the red defense die, so maybe they're going to have better weapons and, obviously different heavy weapon options. Probably some ion weapons to counter the evil droids. But the real fun part will be the Jedi Generals. I think you're going to have some Jedi Commanders and some Jedi as operatives. Like, I can see Obi-Wan as a commander and maybe Anakin playing as an operative. And then also your named clones as commanders as well. Obviously, I think you should have your Anakin unit as an operative unit with an Ahsoka upgrade card for the ultimate crazy unit.
That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I kind of hope to see them as as kind of a more expensive version of the Empire, to where you get these more expensive hero units and maybe better units for a higher cost, and you get like a lower activation count in trade-off, maybe to make them different enough from Stormtroopers, but still have that kindred spirit. I think we run into real trouble when we get to the sequels and we have to have 3 factions that all play the same in the First Order.
Now, the First Order troopers are different.
Differentiating those would be real difficult, but I can definitely see Ahsoka having an ability with Anakin like Chewbacca has with Han Solo, that when Anakin does something, Ahsoka gets to do a version of that as well.
Yeah, I could see it as a real elite army, which we haven't really seen before.
Plus all the crazy starbursts you get to now paint on the armor. Some have tiger stripes, some have lion spots.
Security clones with their bright red go-go boots.
Done and done. All right. We know how I'm painting my clone army now.
Well, so if we've got the clone army, we really have to go down to the rebel cave. Let's talk about the CIS. Ryan, what are you thinking?
Man, the OG Rebels, CIS, lots of droids. I think they're going to have a really unique playstyle, at least if I get to be game dev for a day. I think we'll probably get either a higher model count per activation or just more activations. I'm not sure which route they'll go, but I would love to see maybe like the base core units instead of being 4 units, maybe being 5. I think we'll have lots of Vader bravery with the dashes to where they don't get benefits from that light cover, but they don't have to worry about panicking either because they're droids. And I think they'll just be like terrible, absolutely terrible. I think they're going to throw terrible defense dice, terrible attack dice, at least the base, chaff units. But there will be just a bunch of them. I think it's going to do some really cool things with the metagame because we'll have to start taking Ion just to be ready to have to deal with droid armies. And I think it'll be more of a brute force over synergy playstyle. And I think where that'll get really highlighted is the commanders. The iconic CIS commanders, Count Dooku and General Grievous, they don't really fit in with the rest of their army. We don't see them like issuing tons of orders and handing out aim and dodge tokens. We see them as being awesome at what they do and not really participating with the rest of their army. And I would love to see them reflect that, to kind of play like souped up operatives, fighting for, maybe you can just throw your commander at an objective point by themselves and have the rest of your army contest the others and have them be fine. Have them just kind of do their own thing since you've got dashes for bravery or low bravery counts since they're droids. These big epic heroes being able to fight on their own terms, because we saw Count Dooku in the movies take Anakin and Obi-Wan on by himself, and General Grievous gave Obi-Wan his own fight while the rest of the army kind of fought off to the side in the back of the lightsaber duel. I think it'll be able to do some really cool stuff with souped up commanders and terrible other units. Plus, we get destroyer droids, which, let's be real, like everyone who wants to play CIS doesn't care about anything else other than destroyer droids.
I just want a droidica. I just need 2 to 5 droidicas rolling around the field.
I'm getting flashbacks from the Battlefront video game.
So, Ben, you've got the unaligned system segment. What kind of weird stuff are we going to see?
Oh, I so want the weird stuff. Now, we made jokes about this in previous episodes, and I really kind of do want a Gungan army. Now, before you turn off your podcast, before you just shut down your phone by throwing it out of your vehicle, hear me out. I hate Jar Jar Binks. I hate him with a passion. I was 17 when Phantom Menace premiered. I watched that film, and I was like, what just happened? I'd watched the re-releases like in the previous years before that. I was like, okay, I'm down with the Star Wars again, even though I'm a man of Trek. But Jar Jar? But I think the Gungan army could be interesting. You could have them throwing bomb tokens that explode in range 1 bubbles. They kind of have like a built-in nimbles, like a ratio ability, I'm thinking, except for Boss Nass. You have the Eope riders. They just ride very quickly, but have very light armor. These aren't a very heavy armor type of group of people. Probably low health, but decent courage because they stood up to the robots when they appeared. I could see it. I could see it.
All right, so I gotta ask: are we talking? Do you want an entire 800 points of Gungans you can field, or are you wanting like Republic/Gungan units? Are we going to get the separate faction like First Order, Resistance, Rebels, Empire, CIS, Republic, Gungan? Question mark?
If you give me a Gungan unit I can buy to supplement my Republic army, then I can just buy lots of those.
Good Lord. All right.
You give me a core, you give me a couple special forces, Commander Binks if I have to.
You're going to have to.
You're going to have to.
And then I could just kind of make a side separate army.
You know a concerningly large amount about Gungans, Ben.
Yeah, you do.
I think you're on a list.
I know. It's just Jar Jar Binks is the worst of them. Well, really, and so I laugh at this. And I do like the idea, but I kind of like the idea of adding a mercenary operative team. This would be something that lets you use the Spectre team maybe all at the same time. You could bring in Saw Gerrera as a terrorist group, but a small number of them. I can see Hondo Onaka's Weekway Pirates, in which Hondo is your actual operative, but he has personnel slots where you can add 2 or 3 extra Weekways with him, and you can pick them up on either side. If you're the Empire, if you're the Rebellion, if you're the CIS, or if you're the Republic, because he plays for money, and so whoever will take him, he'll go with them. I could see young Boba Fett and his assassin squad. Little Fetty by himself doesn't cost a whole lot, doesn't do a whole lot, but suddenly you give him a personnel slot for a unique crew like, I don't know, Bosk with a shotgun, or Aura Singh with that long-range sniper rifle, or that guy that, spoiler alert, that she shoots because he says bad words about her. He's just a wound soak. I can see making an operative team that's going to cost you points if you bring all of them, but allows you kind of mix and match for exactly the mercenary that you think you need for that particular group.
When Ben starts babbling about miscellaneous bounty hunters and Gungans, I think it is time to call it an episode. Guys, we thank you for tuning in, as always, for supporting the STABcast. Special thanks to our producer, John Michael. And until next time, I'm Ryan Slowoski, reminding you that your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
I'm Will Heim. A plan is only as good as those who see it through.
And I'm Ben Fowler, because as Hondo says, I may not be as young as I once was, but I'm older.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Actually, we went to John Michael's house. Happy birthday!
Lies! Deceptions!
I hope we showed up instead of not coming.
Yeah, that's going to make this bit real awkward.
I don't believe what I'm hearing.